Thought for the week. Sarah. Never too late for God to answer prayer. In this pandemic that's going on, there's a lot of waiting going on, of not knowing, wondering and hoping. And as believers, we're waiting for God to answer our prayers, to take this terrible thing away. But it's hard to keep believing, especially if it feels like there's been no answer from God, that God hasn't even said no, let alone yes. It can feel as though he's not bothered with us. Now Sarah, Abraham's wife, knew all about waiting, and she knew all about not hearing God speak. But I think she can tell her story herself. My name is Sarah, or at least that's my name now. I was Sarai, until God changed it, and changed me too. You see, it was always Abraham, my husband, who was closer to God. He heard him as clearly as you can hear me, calling him to leave his country and his people and go to a new land, to found a new nation. I went with him, of course. What else is a wife to do? But I never heard the voice, at least not then. I must admit I wished for a while that Abraham couldn't hear God either. It seemed every time we settled down, the voice would come and off we'd go again. But you can't argue with the call of God. You have to believe and obey and follow where he leads. I was fine with the last two, obeying and following. Abraham's my man, and where he goes, I go, following the voice. But believing, that was the hard bit. I never heard the voice, you see. And with the call to move on, there was this promise too, one I knew could never come true, the promise of a nation fathered by Abraham and produced by me, Sarai. We were childless, you see, and it was my fault. In my society, that meant years of misery, of desperate prayers, years of pitying looks and hypocritical comments. I knew what they were thinking. If you can't give your man a child, you're cursed by God. You should be sent back to your family in disgrace. And what was worse, by the time Abraham first heard that voice and the promise, it was already too late for both of us. The promise seemed like a sick joke, but Abraham believed it. And I tried to. In fact, I tried to make it happen. I've always been the practical type, you see, very down to earth, and if there's a problem, I like to fix it. So, problem. God's promised to create a new nation from Abraham. I can't give him children. So find him someone who can. My maidservant Hagar. It's perfectly acceptable in our tribal customs to do that, and if God won't give me children, maybe he'll still bless Abraham through another woman. Sorry. All very sensible, all very practical. I just couldn't handle it. I hated Hagar from the moment she announced her pregnancy. I behaved so badly, and I'm ashamed of it. But it was like every time I saw her, I remembered that God didn't want me. Even when he spoke to Abraham again and said that it was me that would be the mother of a nation, I just could not believe that God cared about me. And by that time, at nearly 100 years old, Abraham was having trouble believing it too. So God came to me and changed my whole life. I thought it was too late for me to meet him, too late for him to answer my prayers. Thought he'd rejected me, and I was wrong. He came in a way that I could understand. No voices from me, but a stranger, seeking food and shelter, travelling with two friends. I guess they must have been angels. I heard them talking to Abraham, you see. I know women aren't supposed to socialise with important guests, so I stayed in the tent, but I just happened to be working by the entrance flap and couldn't help overhearing. You know how it is. And then they said it. By this time next year, Sarah will have a son. Well, I couldn't help it. I just let out a snort of laughter at the thought of us two dried up old sticks having a baby. And then the Lord, I knew that one was him, looked at me, and for the first time ever, I had to decide. Would I believe that nothing was too hard for God, as he asked? Or would I call God a liar? Well, here I am. My prayers answered after more years than I care to count. The miracle accomplished by the power of God, holding my baby son Isaac in my arms. Not too late after all. Not too late to meet God for myself, to find out what faith is about, to learn that he does love me after all, and he does answer prayer. All glory to his name. Sarah went through a lot of her life struggling to believe, convinced that God would bless Abraham, but not at all sure he wanted to bless her. She did what so many of us try to do when we think God hasn't answered our prayers. She tried to find the answer herself. She gave Hagar to Abraham as a substitute mother and made herself and Hagar desperately unhappy. But then she found that it wasn't too late for her to meet God for herself, for him to speak to her. He came to her and touched her life and answered those prayers and those tears. You know, sometimes you can look at other people's faith and hear their stories of God's help and his blessings, and you think, well, why has that never happened to me? Why have I never heard his voice? Why hasn't he touched me? Why is it all such a struggle? Sarah discovered a new relationship with God after many years. It wasn't too late for her. It's never too late for us to reach out to him in prayer, to ask him and say, will you touch my life in a new way? To discover that he does love us and he does want to bless us. And you know, we can also struggle with that business of God not answering our prayers. Our faith in God can be badly shaken if we think he's let us down in some way. And we can make the same mistake as Sarah, trying to fix the problem ourselves if it doesn't look as if God's going to do it. Sarah had to learn that when God makes a promise, he keeps it. And we have to wait for him to act. It's never too late for God to answer our prayers, never too late for him to change our lives. So may we, like Sarah, discover what it means to really know him and be filled with his love. Amen.